Welcome back from lunch, everybody. Hopefully not too sleepy, ready for afternoon session. We've got Lane Rasberry and Robin Isadora Brown here to tell us about Wikidata and how to use Wikidata with Jupyter notebooks. Take it away.
Thanks, everyone. We're both Wikipedia editors, Wikidata editors. I'm going to do a demo for you. I do an introduction to Wikidata, show you a practical project that combines Jupyter Notebooks and Wikidata, and can answer any questions you have about either Wikipedia or Wikidata, what kinds of projects people are doing with these things. So, hi. Let's look at this demo. So this is an example of things that we can do. So supposing somebody wanted to profile the Charlottesville music scene. The idea is that Wikipedia is a general reference source. There's lots of people who make things like Wikipedia articles for bands, very popular thing for people to do. And in 2011, there was a new project established as a complement to Wikipedia. It's Wikidata. So whereas Wikipedia is general reference knowledge, prose for humans to read, Wikidata is the same kind of information converted into structured data, which is accessible to query. So if you know anything about the Charlottesville music scene, you might know this theatrical punk band, the Falsies. They change members from time to time. Someone leaves, someone comes, but they've been around for more than 20 years. Definitely a staple, one of the better music acts to see if you're in Charlottesville. But what if you want to see all the bands? So what I have here is a query written in a language called Sparkle. That's what the Wikipedia platform uses in something called the Wikidata Query Service. So if you want to access the content in Wikidata, you can browse by name. If you search for Falsies, you would find the band. But this query here, it says, give me a list of the bands that have played at a particular music venue in Charlottesville. And Robin, what happens when you do this?
Oh yeah, what happens when you do this? Thanks, Lane. Right, so as Lane said, this is a query. So if we're looking at bands who have played in a local music venue called Chinchilla Cafe, so this is a great way of sort of going through the archive of performances and performers who have played at this venue, with the key kind of concept being that you can really apply this logic to any sort of venue, to any sort of, say, like cultural event, any sort of performer, artist, and you can think about the possibilities of expanding that, right, to go beyond just culture, right, and performance, whether you're looking at science, scientific information, medical information, historical information, information about people, authors, etc. So if we were to run this query, we are able to, so I don't know if Lane, you explained it all the way, but essentially what we're doing here is looking for all the participants who have played at this specific venue, which is indicated by this unique persistent identifier that's present within Wikidata for the venue Chinchilla Cafe. And we want to return all the participants who have participated or performed there, what they're called, an image associated with them. So this is going to call the property image, right? That's within each Wikidata entry for that band. If there's an image associated, it will grab that and display it, as well as their Bandcamp identifier. Bandcamp is a social media / streaming site for musicians and artists that is slightly better than other streaming platforms, but I won't name. But that information can also be located in that Wikidata entry, along with other identifiers and other streaming services. So if we were to run this query, we get a bunch of images. So these are all bands and performers who have played at this venue as specified in the query. You can see the image, the name of the image, and the link to it, which is located in Wikicommons. Wikicommons is a database / collection of open copyright images. So if you think of Wikidata as sort of data entries, this is going to be entries for pictures, right? Pictures, drawings, illustrations. That also has structured data associated with it. And underneath is the name of the act or the performer or the band. So this is a really easy way to load a pretty simple query and see, okay, like what kind of performers or who are these specific performers who have been associated with this venue historically. Mind you, this is all information that is within Wikidata, so it's not going to be able to comb right through the internet and try to figure that out. It has to be entered by a human or assisted by a robot with a human to enter it into Wikidata in the first place. So how do we run this kind of query? What we saw back here is this Wikidata query service, which you can, if you just search for it, it should be the first link. And if you know this language Sparkle, as Lane mentioned, you can design a query. You can also use this helpful tool, which is a query builder, which you can has a more friendly user interface for essentially creating the code or the search query you would like to use. But what we've used for today, and what we'll show you in a little bit, is this service called Pause, which is essentially an online version of a Jupyter Notebook that is kind of designed / very amenable to running Wikidata queries with, and it's open source and easily available to share. So, for example, this is if you're familiar with Jupyter Notebooks, right? You have these cells up here, right, with your code, and this is the query for what I just showed you. Or actually, this is I think a new query. But with a similar data set, so looking at performers and performances at this venue, Chinchilla Cafe. This is all in Python, so we don't have to like install certain instances of Python. We just go right to this Pause Jupyter Notebook. And we were using this wrapper called Sparkle Wrapper. This allows you to actually run Sparkle code, or Sparkle query within your notebook. And we're also just going to load pandas just to show for a data frame, right? So you can just install that, import any necessary requirements you have for this. So because we're displaying images, we're using this IPython display and image additions, as well as this Sparkle wrapper. And then here is our actual query right here. This is the important part. We're specifying an endpoint URL, which is going to be the wikidata.org/sparkle. So like where you're actually like sending your query, the actual query here, which can look exactly like the query, say enter here, or if you use this assisted query builder, it can spit out the raw code for you to just put into the Jupyter Notebook. And this is essentially just after this creating a data frame for your data to just display it nicely. So for example, we specified getting the name of the band, the link to their Wikidata entry, and the image associated with. So doing what we did earlier, just in a slightly different way using Jupyter Notebooks. And you can see these here. And I think that's all I wanted to show, at least for this, for now, for like this demo of using Wikidata. But we're gonna get more into that in a little bit.
So that's what I got for you. So Wikipedia established in 2001, 100,000 people editing it every day, a couple 100,000 people editing it in a given month. It's been going on for some time. And if you want to move this data out of the Wikipedia platform, the wiki ecosystem, take snapshots of it at particular points in time, then you can run queries in a Jupyter Notebook, pull it out, and then do whatever you want with this general reference data that's loaded into the system. We have lots of people doing lots of experiments in this way with Wikipedia, trying to come up with general reference information on different subjects. I'm going to give some demos about some things that Wikidata has done, but that's what we're here to present today. So what kind of content does Wikidata have? Anybody who's ever been in the news, anybody featured in Wikipedia. So you could run a query that says, give me all the list of the people who have ever graduated from the University of Virginia, and modify that by whose occupation is astronaut. And you would get a list of people. So kind of hard to figure that out on your own. AI is doing these kind of things, but if you want to actually see the data set where you can go into an institution and say, give me all the lawyers at a particular place, give me the birthplaces of all the presidents. If you can imagine any kind of fact that you would see in a Wikipedia biography for a person, you can start querying for that in Wikidata. Same thing with places. Ask all kinds of questions about places at scale. give me all the universities in the United States and put them in order by their endowments. So AI does this by magical ways, but the old-fashioned way to do it is to come up with a data set and query it yourself. And you can sort all kinds of institutions in all kinds of ways by the information that starts in Wikipedia, gets converted to data in Wikidata. Look at this for yourself. Ask all kinds of funny questions. So I'm going to just ask you, like, it's not a trick question, but just like, what are all the data sets you would need to answer this particular question? What is the most populous city in the world that has a female mayor? Somebody tell me what data you need to answer that question.
Cities by population.
A list of what?
A list of mayors of cities.
Okay, list of all the mayors in all the cities in all the world. Okay.
And we're also assuming that it means right now, so a list of mayors right now, rather than a historical list of all mayors.
Right, okay, yes.
And the population of each.
Population of every city. Okay, something else?
Gender.
You gotta have gender labels on everybody too.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So where would you find all these data sets if you were just going around on the internet wanting general reference data sets? Who has these ready? Well, Wikipedia has these ready. It's very, very easy to get this kind of information off Wikipedia. You run the query, and it's mayor of Tokyo right now. So that's where we are right now. Yes.
Is all of Wikidata, does it all appear in an info box somewhere on some Wikipedia page?
No,
Or-
Wikidata is much more expansive than Wikipedia. There's a lot of data in Wikidata that's not actually in Wikipedia. So a lot of information from Wikipedia is in Wikidata. The goal of Wikipedia, there's some claims in Wikipedia that are more difficult to structure as data. So by and by, Wikipedians are continually trying to find out how do we structure every claim in Wikipedia so that it can be queried. Some things are easier to query than others. And then there's all kinds of data sets being imported into Wikidata with the intent to look how can we get this into Wikipedia, standardized Wikipedia. Also, Wikipedia comes in multiple languages. English is the most curated. Korean, Japanese, German, French, Spanish, they're very well curated, but there's 100 languages that are very popular in Wikipedia. And the thought is we're never gonna have humans that are gonna be able to curate every single language, upkeep all these different language versions of Wikipedia. But Wikidata is considered to be the key to this. The more data we can structure, the easier it is for us to kick translations, verified information back to all these different language versions. So by and by, more and more of Wikipedia is getting structured. Other questions about where this is coming from? There's those info boxes in Wikipedia, if you know what a Google Knowledge Graph is. So information out of Google's Knowledge Graph, when they have a box with some statement of facts, here's the population of the city, here's the current mayor. Often they do their fact checking with Wikipedia. And Wikipedia's got those info boxes too. Those are human curated. There's continuous humans debating what information should go inside an info box. Like some people are big fans of weather, and they say if you're looking at a city, you really need seasonal weather information. Other people say, what does it matter? You know, they'll go to the weather section of the article. We don't need to give that the prime real estate at the top. So people argue about what information should get the best real estate on a Wikipedia article, because you can't put everything there. So the info boxes, they're still up for debate inside Wikipedia.
What's the how should I think about updates to data on Wikidata? Is it like, are there processes running that are constantly updating the data, or is this like something that is happening kind of daily? Or I'm sure it depends on the data set, but is there kind of like a best practice?
No, it's quite chaotic.
Fair.
Yeah. So it's catch as catch can. That's the best I can say. So Robin here is very much interested in culture in Charlottesville, but not every town the size of Charlottesville has someone who's documenting the music scene. There's some places where it's easier to come up with structured data. So Robin's producing what in Wikipedia and what in other internet platforms is called OC, original content, which is the coolest thing that a person can come up with. They start with the air, and somehow out of the air they weave like information that's never been published on the internet before. And Robin's documented all these bands in Charlottesville, and so you can query Charlottesville, but you can't query. Harrisonburg just had Mac Rock. Rock Music Festival. So hard to query that because there's not someone producing structured data in Harrisonburg in this way. We have so there's a lot of people editing Wikipedia. There's a lot more professional and institutional collaboration with Wikidata. So there's institutions that will collaborate with Wikidata that are not interested in Wikipedia. So we have lots of museum partnerships, we used to have government agency partnerships. It's been kind of rough these past few weeks. There's a lot of people who will upload the data that's of interest to them, but they're not going to take care of the entire world. So for example, well, I'll show you some more examples.
Oh, can I mention something?
Yeah,
real quick?
yeah, sure.
So in addition to people uploading data, updating Wikidata, if you go to any given Wikidata entry for something, you'll often see that for each claim or for each property, so it's structured such that for a given topic you have properties such as birth date, death date, if we're talking about a person, maybe gender, maybe height, occupation. All of these also have a place for a reference, and you'll often find that there's very few times where people actually put a reference. So that's also something to think about, is that it's not just also adding data, it's also adding data that's backed up by some sort of secondary source.
I'm a researcher in the School of Data Science here at the University of Virginia, and I work with curating scientific literature, pulling out different claims, especially managing citation data into Wikidata. So I'm going to demo some of these. It depends. So what I have here is different queries that you can do in Wikidata that people have played around with. The first one, and I'll show you this one, longest river in each continent. It's not such a big data set, and also there's lots of people who are interested in this. This is the kind of thing that high school kids could manage by themselves, that kind of project. Nuclear power plants. So the slides are online. You can check these out. It's hard for us to tell, are there nuclear power plants that we don't know about somewhere in the world? It would take a subject matter expert. We have a certain list, and we don't always have the date when they start. Wikidata also has some funny things about the way it structures the data. So date of service start, we reuse that property over and over again. So we use it for nuclear power plants. We also use it for lighthouses. When did they first turn the light on a lighthouse on at the same time? So you can query lighthouses from the 1700s. You can query nuclear power plants from now, and there's this service start date. Threatened animal species, that's another funny one because there's a lot of naturalists, biologists. What do you call these people, Robin?
Conservationists?
Conservationists?
Ecologists?
Yeah. They know their species, but the only way you can get a picture of it is if you put all the data on the table. The people who know that insects are dying out may not see that bats are dying out, may not see that some mammal is dying out. They publish this in research articles, but a typical research article is going to be a survey of one particular species. And so you can't get a global picture of things unless everyone converts the text of their article into structured data and you query the whole world at once. So rivers, query for rivers. Give me an instance or a subclass of a river. I want the length, I want the image, I want the coordinate location. And there you go. There's your rivers ordered by length.
Then you wanted them per continent, I think.
Yeah. I just got pictures here. I mean, sort of made it any which way. Coordinates, yeah, look at that, no coordinates. So I showed you a query and I'm not actually showing you the results from that query. Yes, good catch. Static query, where you could jump in the query and look more into it. Give me all the disasters. So this is, I don't know if you've ever heard of the passing of a celebrity, and then you go to the Wikipedia article, and it says this person is an actor. After they pass, some Wikipedian jumps on and says this person was an actor. So Wikipedians jump on any storm, any earthquake, the train jumps off the tracks. So as soon as a disaster happens, someone makes a Wikipedia article about the disaster, and you can sort these by what kind of disaster there are. And you have the makings of a crisis response team. So going beyond Wikipedia, there's another open project called OpenStreetMap. If any of you have heard of this one, so Google Map is proprietary data and Apple Map is proprietary data, but OpenStreetMap is open mapping data. So if you know there's a disaster in an area, then you can do things like query where are the clinics in that area. And if you don't have enough data, you can have an online global response team. There's a project called Humanitarian OpenStreetMap that tries to provide data which allows people to get a disaster response, especially in places that aren't well equipped with data, aren't robust for these kinds of things yet. Robin, do you want to show some more notebooks?
Sure, we can show some, there's a few queries. So these are produced from that pause service for Jupyter Notebook. Just, so this is the one I showed earlier, or screenshot from, displaying a database of some of the bands that have performed at Chinchilla Cafe, their Wikidata URL, and wherever based out of. So you can see it could be as fine as the city, or larger to Virginia, the state. And the query earlier, right, displaying images from some of the bands. These are also all the requirements, but we don't have to look at that. Some other kind of queries we can show. This is the same kind of query I just had on the previous slide. This is using a slightly different method. So this is using a Sparkle kernel within Jupyter Notebook. So you could actually load up a Sparkle kernel and use
Percent magic.
yes, you can use magic to do this, which is actually really convenient if you just want to do a quick little search, right? And just plug this Sparkle code right in there. I like this just because it's a little less formatting, a little less things to have to deal with, and you get your links that you can click on directly, which is nice. These are also going to be using the Sparkle kernel, but just some examples of showing, for example, a number of or different mountains in Virginia and where they are, or a description of the mountain. So you can see where they are, the name of the mountain, and a link to the entry. This is also a really good way of seeing like where there might be weird or maybe mislabeled data. So you can see we have Allen Mountain and Allen's Mountain. If you were really interested, you might want to go in there and see like, oh, did somebody mix this up? Did someone think it was called Allen's Mountain and they made a new entry, but it's really Allen Mountain? You see it's in a different location, right? So that might be an instance where you want to go in and check to make sure those are actually two separate things. Like I said earlier, this is using a database that maybe has some errors. And so you really have to check to make sure that if something looks weird, you might want to look into it more. We also have, if you wanted to look at museums in Virginia, I don't believe this is an exhaustive list, but this is just an example of some of the museums that are located in Virginia with a brief description, and if there's location information that's displayed there. So different museums, and something a little closer to home. One of the projects I've been doing lately is putting in Wikidata entries for all the authors who have participated in the Virginia Festival of the Book. I've only been doing this year as I was a volunteer. This festival's been going on for 30 plus years, so it's kind of a lot of data. But I thought it would be interesting to have to have all these authors in Wikidata, and it's also quite useful for Virginia Humanities, the organization that puts on this festival, to be able, for example, to be like, okay, how many authors, so let's get a list of authors that participated in 2025. With this information, you can also see how many times have authors had repeat participation. So within each of these Wikidata entries for an author, you could put participant Virginia Festival of the Book and have a modifier that says point in time. So it could be like 2025, 1992, 2001, right? Or you could, if it's present within the Wikidata entry, awards. So you could be like, what are all of the awards from all the authors who have attended the Virginia Festival of the Book? You can imagine that this would be pretty useful information to easily access if you want to create some sort of like press, or you want to have like a fact sheet, an info sheet about your festival, right? Yeah.
I have never used Sparkle, but I have used many other query languages.
Sure,
SQL is, extremely structured, extremely rigid. I've used Elasticsearch, which has, can be fairly rigid or can be fairly, haphazard, depending on how you query it. So it looks like the Sparkle language is kind of a mixture of filtering and outer join snatching at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, does it depend on how the person who entered the data in the first place decided to enter it? Or is it,
I think
are there patterns of how data are queryable that are standardized across up? Because like the person who puts in mountains and the person who puts in authors
right.
might not think of them the same way.
They can, yeah, so that's a really good point. So I would say there is some flexibility. I don't, like there isn't, say for example, you did want to query every mountain in Virginia. There is some wiggle room, but there isn't like one answer, right? There isn't one piece of code that has to be, like that's the only way to do it. Because for example, if I wanted to, if some of that data, right, didn't have precise information, so say for example, in terms of location, it had the city, but not the state. And in the query I said, get all mountains that are in Virginia, but I failed to specify and it's any of the what do they call it? Territories or administrative entities within Virginia, then I might miss some things, right? Versus mountains that just say for location Virginia. So you really have to kind of think about what your data looks like, and that's going to vary based on the kind of data you're logging and how exhaustive or characterized those entries are. So there has to be a little bit of creativity and flexibility. Does that answer your question?
Is there, how much of a formal ontology is there? Like, can you query with inference such that it would know that like Charlottesville was a subcategory of Virginia?
I'm pretty sure you have to specify.
It's a graph database, and Sparkle is easier for people who don't know formal querying or computer scientists. It's used mostly in the humanities. So if you when you do a query, the way you write it is give me all the instances or subclasses of your item, like instances or subclasses of rivers. And then if something's not marked as a river, but it's marked as a tributary, then that will come up as a subclass of river. So there's an ontology that a tributary is a type of river. So the idea is that people call things by all kinds of names, and Wikidata, the query service, it tries to find it. Disadvantages of this are that everything's got a different name because we don't force people to use particular terms just so long as they shove it into the ontology somewhere. So it's also multicultural. So people might do this. What fits in the ontology in one language might not make sense in another language. So it's messy in that sense. And another cost that we have to bear in Wikidata is that when you're querying across the graph instead of something clear, the queries become enormous and they frequently time out because it's so messy. So
It helps to be specific.
it helps to be specific, but if someone's not specific, then they can run a long query, and if it resolves, then good. If not, they need to be more specific.
But at base, it is a graph database.
It's a graph database.
So like, God help me, I was a moderator for the Wikipedia math category for ages. And when two nerds disagree on something, the vortex of like anger that emerges is incredible. I can only imagine this happens constantly. Something that's much more rigid, like Wikidata. Does it have a similar moderation kind of thing where people get elected and they have categories they kind of are in charge of? Like,
yes, but Wikidata tends to just host conflicting claims in the same item without resolving them. So if somebody says this goes in this category, they both cite references, and it's just awkwardly in two different categories that don't make sense for the same thing.
And then you select distinct and cross your fingers.
Yeah.
fair enough.
And I guess in terms of the structure of the data itself, it appears to be an RDF triple store.
Yes, that's right.
And so in terms of metadata and like changes, like we were talking about, if you wanted to get, know who was, or like participation in the Festival of the Book, like, did I participate in the Festival of the Book 2025 or did I, because you couldn't have an edge then, you can't have edge properties, right? So you couldn't say participated in with the property 2025.
You can.
You can. So
You
this
can.
this is an example of like an actual entry, right? So we have the name of the entry, the unique identifier, a brief description, and then you'll see all these statements, right? So instance of human, right? Sex or gender, female, country of citizenship, United States. There's so many different things you could potentially put in here, right? This is a pretty well characterized and well-known author, so you can see there's lots of references, there's lots of different properties that are filled out. You can see that participant in Virginia Festival of the Book has this sub-property, point in time, 2025. So you could add multiple points in time, for example, if you wanted to show that this person participated multiple times.
And is point in time, is that like a special, can you create new sub-properties or that's a special one?
Point in time, location.
So for example, if we were to do this, we can add a qualifier.
There's
Point in time, start time, end time, and cause, duration, location, destination, together with represents. There's a lot. There's a potential a lot you could do there. There's so many properties and it's kind of ridiculous, yeah. And you can see like race time. That's not going to be appropriate for Festival of the Book, but because Festival of the Book is considered probably within the category of events, right? This is going to come up with some suggestions of like, oh, what are typical properties or subclasses that people use for different kinds of events, right? So it can say maybe you want race time in there. You can also search for properties.
Time on stage.
Time on stage, right? All kinds. Your imagination, right, is the limit, really.
So the participation is not a node.
Is what?
So like the participation, the act of doing is not a node here. Like the person's a node and the event's a node.
Right.
Right.
Participation's not. The conference is a node.
Right. So then,
The person.
so each of these also has has its own page. So each property, each subclass has its own description or entry within Wikidata. And of course, identifiers to other databases, right?
Sorry, I have lots of questions.
It's
What about entity resolution? So here we have this author. This person has a name and some particulars. Maybe there's another author by the same name. How does that work out?
Oh, how does that work out? So typically,
We have so many disambiguation words.
it's a lot. Let's see.
So just overall, I'll tell you about the bias of Wikipedia and Wikidata. You might have heard that Wikipedia is unreliable. You might have heard that 20 years ago. From the very beginning, Wikipedia has been obsessed with fact-checking. There's always been excellent fact-checking. Wikipedia has always been high quality, according to us Wikipedians, and we've continually done this. So the reason why festivals are important to us is that if anyone's name dropped anywhere, and if anyone's cited anywhere, we want this person's entire portfolio, because the particular kind of bias Wikipedia has is assigning authority to people and seeing what claims are associated with that person and institution. So some of the things we want is we want a list of every award in the world, and we want to know who's ever won any award in any context. We want a list of every conference in the world, and we want to know everyone who's ever presented at a given conference. We want every paper ever published in the world, and I work with WikiCite, the citation corpus project. We want to find co-author relationships. So is this person reliable? Some ways you can determine, do they hang out with reliable people? Have they won the awards? Did they go to a reliable institution? Like, what is their network relationship? And it's just easy to move that over into like concert venues. The same way that you would judge the quality of an academic or somebody who's making claims. You can say, show me all the people who've ever exhibited at a museum, or show me all the people who've played at a concert venue, or any other such group of people are convening.
So I pull up here. This was a frequent problem when I was curating this Festival of the Book list that I was surprised to find. People share names. So there's a lot of people have a lot of names in common. As you can see here, I was like, what's a common name? Sam Wilson. So you can see from fictional characters to researchers, how do you know it's the Sam Wilson you're looking for? There's typically will be some one-line description of the entry. So for example, American toxicology researcher, We have software engineer. We have a researcher with an ORCID ID. We also have a middle initial, right, to distinguish people. So anytime you have, like what Lane was saying, if you have a link to some sort of like external database that also has unique identifiers, that's a really good way of, you know, teasing apart entries that have the same names. It can get hard though, because if you have two entries for someone, Joe Schmo, right, that says writer or author, I wouldn't know if that was like for an author I was looking up like, oh, here he has an entry. If I actually looked in there and went, it's like, oh, this is actually someone called this person a writer and author because they're a researcher who wrote and authored research articles instead of, say, novels. So that's something you have to specify, which could be within a property such as occupation. Hopefully, or maybe someone would write, in addition to author or writer, they might put researcher or fiction author or have some sort of subclass under writer that says novels.
You can query, show me the people who have won an Oscar and also authored an academic paper.
Should we run that query?
How long is
Yeah.
that list?
It's not very long.
We have Greg Humphreys in town. I think did that, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't,
Or you
Queen,
could just ask Michael.
There are a lot more Oscars than you think there are actually. A lot of them are for kind of dumb things. You can get an Oscar if that's what you aspire to.
Just to be a weird trivia nerd for a second, there is such a thing as an Erdos Bacon.
yeah, okay.
What's the third thing? Oh no, there's a third number. Yeah.
Sorry. It's like people who have written an academic paper and acted and
There's a third. I'm sorry,
everybody.
Sabbath number. So that is.
Look it up on Wikipedia.
I am. Did not expect the attention. I apologize. Sabbath number is. Can you find a link between yourself and the members of Black Sabbath? Yeah, that's exactly.
So author disambiguation is a challenge that it comes from libraries. We sort this out in so many different ways too. The way we solve it in Wikipedia is try to have every identifier. We scrape up every identifier, put it into Wikidata, and sort things out that way. There's some funny cases, like a parent will name their kid after themselves and then hire them in their own research lab. So we've done a few cases like that. It's hard to sort out who's who. There's this person in China named Li that has attended every university in the world, has a degree in every subject. So common names in China, that's a challenge for us to sort out. But we're doing disambiguation to the extent that we can. And at least if somebody's not resolved, we have ways of marking it not resolved.
Yeah. So for example, for this author, there are various databases that all, you know, tied to this person. The more authority or the more used, more comprehensive they are, right? The more reliable we can say like this person is this person, right? So having like, for example, Library of Congress authority ID is pretty reliable, right?
That one says it doesn't have a reference.
Ooh.
That because ID is just not filled in, or
Someone probably just didn't put the reference there.
If you click on it, it brings you to Library of Congress. So sometimes it makes sense to make a citation or reference. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense in the context because you can click through to the Library of Congress catalog.
you know, like citation needed in brackets on here. I was curious about it.
So we can sometimes we mark the heuristic. If it's evident, sometimes people don't leave it. Sometimes we have to have either an automated heuristic that helps us make the decision, or a human will put a note and say this was ambiguous and this is how I made the decision that this is the same person. But here we have 10 different authority files, each linking to part of this person's corpus. And I'm guessing that people didn't think there was a lot of ambiguity here.
Yeah, I guess the thing I'm wondering about is, what if all of these links are true,
Yeah.
and they all link to someone with that name, and
Yeah.
basically half of them should be one person and half of them should be the other person, right? Like, how do you know? Is it, and I guess part of what I'm thinking is there like a history view? Like, can you look at like the founder's intent of whoever first added that name and then see if you glommed the wrong things on? later?
There's a few things going on. So there's the history view. So
Okay.
just like in Wikipedia, you can see everyone who's ever edited a Wikipedia article. Here's the history log of everyone who's ever edited this Wikidata log.
Okay.
You can look at it in a point in time and you can see where an error arose.
So you can see, when they edited, what they were editing, if it was a bot, if it was a user, going all the way back to the creation of the entry.
Here's like the social thing. So unfortunately, there's not solidarity and collaboration in this world. So there's something called WorldCat that every university library subscribes to. WorldCat makes an identifier called BF for scholarly authors, people who author monographs. There's the Library of Congress catalog. So Library of Congress is a little bit open, but it's hard to get their data from them. They're not entirely committed to the concept of openness. This BF from WorldCat, they sell university subscription services, so they give us some of their data. They won't give us all their data. They'll give us their identifiers, but they don't want to give us the catalogs of all the publications associated with that person. So we're looking forward to a future where, and then there's commercial projects. Elsevier, Clarivate Analytics with Web of Science, they sell access to that data. So University of Virginia pays an undisclosed amount. Somebody could FOIA this, but it's I'm guessing about $150,000 a year to subscribe to something called Web of Science, where you can drop a person's name in and get a list of their publications. You can get some other data. We're looking forward to a world where it's an open data set where everyone's disambiguated and it's easy to just drop someone's name in and get a list of their publications. So we do not live in a world where there's a free and open library catalog, even accessible to universities. And University of Virginia is very lucky to be able to pay $150,000 a year to subscribe to someone's external library catalog. If you're in India or Brazil or an African country at a university, your option is piracy, frankly. You don't have, these products are not marketed commercially at an international rate so that researchers in other universities can get basic information that they need to do fundamental research. And it shouldn't be a competitive marketplace. There's some things that people need in the commons, and library cataloging data is one of them. Another demo?
I think those are all the demos I wanted to show.
I'll show something else.
You got some data?
Yeah.
I have one other question. Going back to OpenStreetMap, because that's the thing I've messed with more.
Sure.
And are there any sort of like formal mechanisms of interchange between the two? Like I've seen a link to Wikidata from OSM before occasionally, but
I'll tell you the politics of it. So every year for 10 years, Wikipedians have gone to the OpenStreet State of the Map conferences, and people from OpenStreetMap, they're always at Wikipedia conferences. We try to collaborate. OpenStreetMap has, we've considered, should we make a Wikidata item for every single street in the world? And we just don't have a meaningful way to curate this kind of information. So some things that we've done data exchange with for monuments, artworks, OpenStreetMap takes data out of Wikidata because we do much curation and explanation about every monument, every statue, and every city park in the world. That's a very Wikipedia thing to talk about. Whereas OpenStreetMap just wants to put it on the map with some coordinates and put an identifier on it. So for art, they link to Wikipedia, and we help them out. They help us out in Wikipedia because sometimes we don't. There's some things that Wikipedia really needs to know about, but there's nothing to discuss, nothing to say about these things because one unit's supposed to be like another. Like, for example, hospitals. So for hospitals, Wikipedia wants to know where are they in the world. Like if someone wants to query, give me all the hospitals in a particular state. But we don't want to differentiate these things too much because they're supposed to be uniform. We want to know how many beds they are, how many specialties they have. Like, is this a place for endocrinology or not? So Wikipedia will put that into Wikipedia articles for like healthcare by country. And we want to have some way to show how many hospitals does this country have. But we're not going to tell the story of the founding of the hospitals because hospitals themselves don't promote this kind of thing. Like some hospitals do, but the majority of hospitals in the world, they don't have a narrative or story that says this is how this hospital was put together. This is its history of things. And hospital awards, they're just not public in that way. It's just not a thing that we can tell a story about in Wikipedia. we would load more into Wikidata, like all the streets, and start doing more curation. We do have some pilots in Wikidata where we do streets. Some of the pilots are streets associated with historical figures. We have a project to find every Martin Luther King Jr. drive in the world, because that's telling a story about this person. So this is and then we do this for other people. So streets named after presidents, and I was thinking of eras in Europe. So there'll be like some dynasty, and then for 100 years in Europe, there's all these streets named after this person. The dynasty passes, but European history goes back hundreds of years. So it's of interest to Europeans to say, here's where the streets from this dynasty still exist, now hundreds of years later. That's stories that Europeans like to tell. But our database in Wikidata, we're getting so many timeouts because of our database architecture that we just cannot load data items by the million into Wikidata. For now, we're having to be a bit particular about what we load in. So anyone can load in 10,000 items. We don't let people casually load in 100,000 or 1,000,000 items. They should talk to the community about whether we have a meaningful way to curate this, so that it's just not loaded with things that no one's going to be able to play with. And also, Wikidata just did its first split. So it used to be just one big database that you could query all at once, and now we've split it and are learning how to manage putting our data in more than one place.
Split it how? Split it by what?
Horribly. It's going
Are you talking about partitioning, like on the engineering of the actual structure?
So what we did is we said, if you want data, this kind of data, you need to query this database. If you want this kind of data, you need to query this kind of database. So it takes a bit of human curation, and we don't have an automated process that helps guide a person through which data we're putting in which database. I don't know how other people sort this. I'm not a database architect, but in Wikidata, it's been pretty rough for us to we're having growing pains.
I was going to ask about that because I come from a little bit of that data architecture world, and like the idea of having a unique identifier and structuring things the way you do sounds massive if you don't have a limit on what people can add to it. Like
No astronomers.
I,
No
especially like
proteins.
I was thinking of like querying like Martin Luther King streets
Yeah.
in Virginia over time,
Yeah.
which means you would have to snapshot that data honestly, which exponentially increases the storage that you're talking about if you're talking about a structured relational
Or have a
database.
start time and end time associated with each one.
Exactly. But
Yeah, again,
either way, it just adds and adds and adds instantly. So
So
where do you house all that?
We let people do projects. We try to benchmark how long it takes to query the thing. We try to come up with general trends. We have a lot of people who are kind of like in the humanities. They come into Wikidata and have their exploration with tech. There was a project here at University of Virginia in the past couple of years. If you've ever heard of the Green Book for, I think it was called Negro Travel, African Americans traveling around the United States. So if you were black in the 50s and you drove someplace, could you go to a restaurant and would they serve you? So the Green Book gives you all the list of the restaurants and the hotels where a black person in the 50s or 60s could drive around and stay at a place. So we imported the Green Book into Wikidata and put all these coordinates on a map. Those businesses often aren't here anymore. So that's like a particular point in time. We did a wiki collaboration with something called Historic OpenStreetMap. So OpenStreetMap is how things are, but you can also use a time bar to slide and say, here's how things were, here's what the map looked like in the 50s. And then the overall project was to say that if you had businesses that were welcoming to this demographic at that point in time, then is there a trend that you have other black business owners who develop businesses around those over the decades? And they found the answer was yes. So like planting those seeds of entrepreneurship, they tended to establish neighborhoods where that demographic was thrived in the business sense in modern times, even though those businesses aren't there today. So we're trying to do it. The idea is everything,
Yeah.
but it's just a matter of how much computational power do we have to manage all this.
And is it really just like one server somewhere? I'm just thinking like on the OSM side, it used to be at least if you really wanted to, you could run your own copy of the whole thing and like get the like hour by hour updates and then query it however much you wanted to pay AWS to
So you
query
can
it.
you can download there's a copy of Wikidata dump that you can get every day.
Mhm.
I don't know what this means. I can just spout out the number, but Wikidata runs on 13 servers. I have no idea what to make of that or what to do with that information. But this is what the Wikimedia Foundation. This is what they tell us that there's 13.
Do you know how many triples it is? I guess that.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm sorry, I don't. I could you look it up on Google? I don't. Let me see. I think I know where to go. Let's see. Wikidata stats. Let's see. Wikidata statistics.
16 million
That's
items.
That's not triples. Okay, so we got 2 billion edits.
Sonnet.
13 billion triples?
That's old probably, but I don't know if that's right. That's an LLM.
Dubious.
There's some diagnostic page or some report page.
Oh, what about? Download the data, let's see if that, I don't want to download it, I just want to see if there are instructions on that page.
This says, Wikidata itself says as of August 2023, there were 15 billion.
Okay.
And then a little bit further down, it says 44 billion. I don't know quite how to interpret that, but okay, so that's big.
All right. Other questions? I got one more demo or one thing to talk through. So here's a project that I did a couple of years ago, and I'll just explain it, and it raises some social issues. So imported clinicaltrials.gov. So this is all the medical research done in the United States on human subjects. Imported clinicaltrials.gov to Wikidata and curated it wiki style, and also put this into Jupyter notebooks for people who didn't want to go into Wikidata but wanted to examine some of the data from here. So clinical trial, here's a sample of this. So there's an entire database. This is $1 trillion industry, multi-trillion dollar. We're talking about the pharmaceutical industry here. So this is highly curated data. There's so many schemas on this. We only imported part of this into Wikidata, the parts of it that could answer some social questions or that were easy for humans to talk about. But the way you could remix this is give me all the clinical trials on a particular disease, and you could do this by location, just in my state, or put these on a map or a point in time, or you could just ask who's sponsoring clinical trials in my state, where's the money coming from, or where is this particular disease researched, and it could be kind of interesting if something's in New England versus if it's in California versus distributed all around the United States. So just ponderous questions like why is sometimes expertise concentrated? Why is sometimes it's the research is distributed? What do you make of that?
Or why are the subjects?
Research subjects
in the research subjects all distributed wrongly or non-randomly.
can be interesting too. What happens in a rich neighborhood? What happens in a poor neighborhood? Like what kind of research do you do with rich people versus poor people? Yeah. And so even though this database is on clinicaltrials.gov, a US government website, when you pull it into Wikipedia, suddenly it becomes easy to remix with all this kind of fluffy data, this humanitarian data. Different kinds of requests. So I'll just say some funny requests that you can make. Looking again at genders, like if you take the principal investigators of clinical trials, and I didn't make anything of this in my research publication, but I was just like, that's kind of strange. Like, why do certain genders of people research certain diseases and other disease? It seems like you got to be a white guy in New England if you want to break into that field. Or why are some research sites very well documented? You know, this is the Smith Lab. It's been around for 20 years and it keeps doing clinical research. Versus where do they throw up a mobile building, do the research, and as soon as the research is over, they tear it down. It's not a laboratory. It just like blows over every 2 years, and then it seems like for this particular research, they never establish any solid, stable infrastructure to do this research. Just moving around over and over again. Who's putting the money in different places? When do you know about the money? Who closes out their clinical trials? Like you're supposed to do compliance, government compliance, say we finished a clinical trial, we reported all our data. Who does compliance and who doesn't? Certain institutions don't. For whatever reason, University of Virginia is often non-compliant. And I can't really figure out why. I think it's just that there's still a human element here. So this is really my honest thought. I think that there's a secretary here who doesn't check a box when the trial is over. So they're actually submitting everything, but since a human has to close it out, there's a human here who doesn't close out a lot of the clinical trials. And University of Virginia is funny for that. Some other funny things. When is a clinical trial run by someone who's not a medical doctor and who has never published an academic paper? Like, why is the principal investigator of a major research study never published a paper, isn't a doctor? So when do you have a business administrator running a trial versus a researcher running a trial? That can be something funny that you can't surface from clinicaltrials.gov because you don't know what papers people have published, or you don't know you haven't disambiguated, done the disambiguation of the people to find out who's exactly running this trial. So that's about as complicated as it could get with structured data. When you put this into Wikidata, you can remix it in different ways and find some funny things. Also, putting this into Wikidata, it surfaces, we have clinicaltrials.gov that does trials in the United States. How easy is it to get the clinical trials in China, Korea, Japan, the European Union, Africa, South America? It's really pretty bleak. So some of the world is in English, and when it's in English, there's not structured data to find. If you're Eli Lilly, so as near as I can tell, this is the way it works. All the pharmaceutical companies, they pay people to curate all the clinical trials in their own corporate libraries, but they don't share that data. So there's no open data sets for most of the clinical research in the world. This can matter for things like COVID or tropical diseases. So you know that all these rich companies, they have this data. I think it ought to be open, but there's no place to easily access it. Clinicaltrials.gov, it only covers the United States. It's a government website, that's what it's supposed to do, but it's kind of awkward that you can't combine this with global searches. And also, I have the idea that scientists in China know how to read English, but scientists in the United States don't know how to read Chinese. So I think they can slurp up our data a lot easier than we can copy theirs. I just wasn't able to navigate the Chinese language interfaces to get the open data out of Chinese clinical trials, and I couldn't find anyone else who had managed to do that either. So happy to answer any other questions you have about Wikipedia or Wikidata. Thanks for hearing us out on this Saturday afternoon.
I have a question about Wikipedia. It's like an international institute. I know you've got offices right across the world. Is there funding sources that are international, given the state of things that are?
Happy to talk about that. So the budget of Wikipedia brings in about $200 million a year. Most of that money is from donations of less than $30. I've never been employed by Wikipedia or the Wikimedia Foundation. I'm a researcher here at the University of Virginia. I have been editing Wikipedia for about 20 years. Robin's been editing Wiki platforms for 3 years. When those donations come in, we have a community governance model. It is in continual conflict with the foundation. So there's a nonprofit entity called the Wikimedia Foundation that works with the community of users. And I'll say even though there's conflict, I'm going to say it's the best community governance model that I know of for any online project. The conflict is healthy, it's robust, and hard for me to explain everything that goes on here, but half the board of directors of Wikipedia are elected from the internet. That's how I'll put that. So there is representation from Wikipedia users on the board for setting this budget and spending this money. And historically, the Wikimedia Foundation has wanted most of the money to go to lower and middle income countries. So people donate mostly in the United States, and that's most of that money is used to encourage Wikipedia training, get Wikipedia community groups to participate in Africa, India, South America. Other questions about anything Wikipedia?
I've got another one.
Yeah, come
And maybe you already mentioned it, but the relationship between Wikipedia and Wikidata,
on.
as far as like source of information either way, anything that they like update each other on.
There's a suite of projects which are all, you could call them all Wikipedia. They're all on the same platform. They're all in the same community governance model. They all share an editor pool. And when you donate to Wikipedia, it all goes to the same place. But Wikipedia and Wikidata are in the same platform. Wikipedia is the familiar encyclopedia for humans to read. Wikidata is structured data that shares the same mission of Wikipedia and roughly the same scope of Wikipedia, a little bit broader, because Wikidata wants to do things like every museum in the world, every hospital in the world, everyone who's ever authored a scientific article, maybe every author of a book, a lot of this. So even if there can't be an article for someone in Wikipedia, like for a particular author, we still want that person's name disambiguated and a list of everything that they published. We put that into Wikidata because even if someone doesn't merit a biography themselves, like we don't have enough content to write a biography about this person, somebody might cite their book, they might have knowledge, and we want to be able to extract knowledge out of everything that's ever been published. We also work with, I'll drop the name of another nonprofit organization, Internet Archive. We've heard of this one? So Wikipedia and Internet Archive and Wikidata very intimately associated.
So does that, when you're doing the data collection on something like an author who isn't notable, does that eventually, I guess in the other direction, does that inform an eventual Wikipedia article potentially, or is that just kind of an unrelated process? Or potentially, depends on if
Yeah, I can get that one.
Oh.
So and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say usually it can be related in the fact that like where are you getting that data from to supplement the information within the entry for an author, for example. Mainly what determines who gets an article, well, one is like if someone's willing to write it, right? And two, if there are published secondary publications about the subject. So for example, if there was an article in a local newspaper about this author, maybe they're giving an interview, maybe it's some sort of press release about the book, that would qualify as a source that could be integrated into Wikipedia for writing a biography. So there has to be some level of curation or editorial discretion, right? That usually through some sort of media outlet. It doesn't have to be like the New York Times or something like a national publication. Anything with really like an editorial board. So you can see where if there's an article published, right, that has information, you can maybe use some of that data to import into Wikidata. So say, for example, they're like, oh, I was born in Kentucky in 1982. Like that could be part of the Wikidata entry that didn't exist before, and you'd have a reference for it. If that's the only place, or if that's the only article about this author, again, that's not enough information maybe to warrant a biography, but that is something that's included in the Wikidata entry. So once you get a certain number of articles, which I think was like 3 or 5 publications about something, that's generally justifies like noteworthiness for a Wikipedia biography or Wikipedia article. So there is kind of like a give and take relationship there, but it ultimately, really comes from like this other external source.
And sorry, And does it go the other way where you can just sort of assume if there's a Wikipedia article in there, it is in Wikidata?
Yeah,
Yes.
all Wikipedia articles have Wikidata items.
That's right.
Not all Wikidata items have a Wikipedia article.
That's right.
I'll give a case that's active right now. So this guy, Mukesh Ambani, he's one of the richest people in the world. Many billions of dollars, owns the telecommunications in India. He has a son, so he's about 70 years old. He has a son who's in his early 30s. And for his entire life, so despite unimaginable wealth, and he's used his wealth to make sure that no journalist in India has ever written anything about his son. Okay, so his son is, he just, in the past few months, he turned over like all the cell phones in India, like or run the company that does that. His son is running that. And so Wikipedians have considered, should we have an article about this kid? And we know two things about him. He's the son of this rich guy and he's the CEO. There is zero other media about this person in the entire world. And so we've got a very scant Wikipedia article of just a few sentences, but Wikipedians are saying this person doesn't merit an article. We simply have nothing to say. And if we have nothing to say about a person, then we don't include the biography in Wikipedia. So despite his kid being super wealthy and super powerful and making a lot of decisions, there's no journalist in the world who's written about him in India or otherwise. These funny things come up. We had something funny. So about that mayor, the mayor of the largest city in the world, there's a lot of funny things that happen in India. We had someone get elected mayor of Mumbai, one of the biggest cities in the world. A woman get elected mayor of Mumbai. Just imagine this. Like, imagine someone getting elected mayor of New York, and they had never appeared in the media before they got elected mayor. So a woman managed to get elected. It's mafia. We're talking about the mafia here. So this woman got elected mayor of Mumbai, and the first time anyone heard of her was when she won the election. So threw off my query there. It's kind of a strange situation for a little while. But we didn't have a Wikipedia article for her. So she's mayor of one of the biggest cities in the world, one of the most, in role, one of the most powerful people in the world. But we had nothing on this woman other than she's mayor.
So is there a way to reverse search that? Prominent undocumented people?
Yeah, so you can search. So you do the Wikidata query and say, show me the people who are like in this prominent search but have no Wikipedia article, and then they stand out. You think, how can this person be in this powerful position, but then no one's written their biography? Some other interesting queries. You can say like, who's very popular in a particular Wikipedia language version. Like who's the most popular person in Bangladeshi, Bangla language Wikipedia who doesn't have an article in English Wikipedia? And you can surface celebrities that everybody in one country knows, but that are unknown in other countries. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, for like Snorkel, do you get like limited by how many queries you can make?
Well, a human can do as many queries as they want. When you bring your robot in to start doing queries, I don't know what the limits are. You can test the limits and see what happens. If someone messages you, you've done too much.
One more. So on the subject of how many, I forgot the term, but like how many tags or facets of information within Wikidata you can add to the how rich it could be. I would imagine, but just confirm this for me, like the process for adding a category would be something that's like a higher level decision, or could I just say I would like to add I'd like to add to give the festivals, I don't know, like a
Link to the set list
page or something like that, or something like.
Yeah.
Is that the sort of thing that I could just do if I wanted to, or would this like an approval process situation?
So I guess I can frame this with the problem I was having,
Mhm.
right? So I was working with someone who is involved with Wiki Project Women's Health, and one of the projects or one of the goals she was working on was she wanted to import data from the World Health Organization, WHO, into Wikidata Specifically, she wanted to import maternal mortality rate for every country in the world. So this is highly documented, right? By WHO, by the UN. This information is out there. It's not in Wikidata. So we're like, oh, it'd be really great to have in Wikidata as part of various countries' profiles. This has statistical relevance. This is important health information, right? When I went and when we went to go into input this data under mortality, we were looking for a specific class because there is a property of mortality rate, for example. That can go by country, it can go by cause of death, various things. There is fertility rate, right? So how many babies are born in a given place, in a given country, etc. There is no property for maternal mortality rate. So we're like, that's kind of weird because mortality rate is, people who've died per, I think it's per 1,000 or per 1,000,000, some denominator. But for maternal mortality rate, this is a very specific definition. It's the number of mothers who have died giving birth per 100,000 live births. So this is a very different denominator. It's a different construct. It's talked about in various publications. It's an established concept. It doesn't have its own property. So in order to create a new property, we actually have to propose that. So we created this proposal in Wikidata to the community saying, hey, we are working on this project. We want to we're arguing to create this new property because we're citing this, and this organization uses, this is a common statistic, and we're using it for these purposes. So essentially it goes to the community and anybody can comment on that and they can say, yes, this is a good idea, we should include this, or no, we don't need this for this reason. Right now I think it's still unresolved because some problems we're waiting on humans to kind of form a consensus. But to answer your question, if there isn't a property, you can make an argument for it to exist, but it's essentially decided by the community.
Gotcha. Yeah. So for a set FM list, one of the reasons we haven't yet started making Wikidata items for every song ever composed. So if when there's more popular songs, like award-winning songs, or it's Billboard, or it's got a music video associated with it, we do that. But for all these bands in Charlottesville, we're not yet importing the names of the tracks of all their studio albums. We just don't. It's too much data. We have a way to do this, and there's databases we can connect to say, here's the track, here's the recording. For one song, it has the studio version, and then the composition, and then the recording, and so many different versions of it. And we're not ready to import all the data that we need to start curating every song that's been written yet. Okay. Eventually, yes. Other questions? Anything about Wikipedia or Wikidata? Right, you're all more powerful now because now if you don't know where to go get general reference data, you can pull it out of Wikidata, stick it in your notebook, and then take it on and reuse it wherever you want to use it in the world.
Awesome, thank you both.